Hey guys, this is Mike Tarallo with Qlik. Thanks for joining me in part 2 of the series in becoming more familiar with Qlik GeoAnalytics. In the last video, I showed you how to use our add-on subscription service named Qlik Geocoding. Basically allowed me to take addresses and convert those to coordinate points that I could plot on a Qlik GeoAnalytics map object or our native map component. Now in this video, we're going to take this one step further, still using the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector, and now we can try to find the closest stores to a particular location, or we can plot the distance or the route from a particular location. And to do that, we need to use the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector and define some operators. And then once we have that information, we also can visually depict those distances using a line layer. So let's get right into that. So as mentioned in the previous video, we use the data load editor to access the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector. Now I have some pre-canned information here that I'm going to need for this example, so I'm just going to copy that. I'll create a new tab and we'll call this one closest, because we're going to look for the closest stores to a particular location, and we're going to drag that after the geocoding tab. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define a home location. Okay, and it can be done a number of different ways, the way you define that home coordinate. In this case, I'm using an inline table, and I'm just going to uncomment this inline table, and you can see that we're loading it with a field name, lat, and long. So this is the starting point, if you will. So at this point here, just give that a quick load. Click close. And I want you to take note that when we use what's called a coordinate point geometry, it's actually expressed as longitude comma latitude and placed in these brackets. So just for an example here, when we use our maps, we express it that way. Now why it's like that, I'm not sure. I have a question out to the product team to understand. I'm not sure if that is a standard format that all geospatial tools use, or that's something that iDevio had defined back when they were iDevio maps. I'm not sure, but I'll update the video with a comment once I get that answer. Okay, so if we go back to the visual, let's add a point layer. Now, understanding that these custom objects are part of the Qlik GeoAnalytics installation, and you only have access to the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector when you purchase the Qlik GeoAnalytics add-on. Now you could also use our native map components, but being you have Qlik GeoAnalytics as an add-on package, you're better off using all of these predefined visualizations that come with it. So let's grab bubble layer or point layer, and we're going to add a dimension. Now in the properties panel, for example, the dimension here, it's very simple. Since it's just going to be a single point, I'm just going to give it a name, and I'm just going to hard code a defined value called home. Now for the location and the measure, I could perform a concatenation of longitude and latitude if I wanted to. However, I'm just going to put in the actual field location like you see here. Okay, so there's our starting point. Now the reason we defined it in the table is to use that as the starting point location for the Qlik GeoAnalytics operation. But so now the blue dot is our starting point and the yellow squares are our destination points. Okay, now that we have that information, it's always important to position your cursor in the location where you want the Qlik GeoAnalytics script to be inserted. So I have my position there. Now I know that when I define my closest operator, I'm going to have to input parameters. And one of those parameters is going to be the name of the destination table. In other words, what table has the coordinate points that have been loaded for those stores. And that is this address point lookup result table. And that's the alias that we have defined in the previous step. So I'm just going to copy that for later. Okay. Also note the name of this table called home table. So now I'm going to go to Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector and select data. Okay, once again reiterating that this connector basically accepts input parameters and then writes script into the dialog. So I already have some parameters defined here from a previous example. I'm just going to walk through these and let you know what's happening here. From the operation list, you can see we have a number of operations. In the last one, we did address point lookup using our subscription service. Then there are other operations here for different type of geospatial analysis capabilities, which I'm not going to get into at this time. But the one I'm interested in is closest. And that's going to return a few fields back with information such as the route, geometry points, for example, to trace a desired route, as well as the distance parameters, such as miles or meters or however you have it defined. So here my distant units is going to be miles, because that's how I want to define my distance unit of measure. The maximum distance between geometries, meaning what is the maximum span that you want to find these closest stores. How far out do you want to go? 30 miles, 40 miles, 50 miles? I want to go within 30 miles to find the closest stores. So for example, if I had a store that was 5 miles, 10 miles, and 29 miles away, then those 3 stores would fall within that 30-mile range. Distance type, how we're going to get there, and how it's going to be defined. It's going to be by car. Closest count. How many stores do I want returned with the closest distance? So basically here is give me the 5 closest stores within 30 miles. Now, dataset containing geometries to measure from. This is my home location. So here, you give it whatever name you want. I'm going to call it home. From the type, we already have a table loaded. That's why we did the inline table. The name of the table was home table. Our fields defined in the home table were name, lat, and long. And the geometry type is latitude and longitude point. When you see this, this means you have a coordinate that has separate fields for latitude and longitude versus a point geometry type, which is a single field that has latitude and longitude defined in one field. In this case here, since lat and long are defined separately, this is a latitude and longitude point. Only load distinct? No. We can ignore those parameters. Dataset containing geometries to measure to. Okay, so these are going to be the store locations. So the name is store. Type, loaded table. Again, store could be whatever name you want. Loaded table being the table that we've already loaded from the geocoding service. The table name being address point lookup result. That was the alias from the previous operation. And then the fields within that operation, ID, and then the lookup underscore geometry. Okay, so that means that it's basically going to do the distance calculations between the home table coordinate and then the resulting store coordinates. Now the geometry type here is a point, okay, because if you looked at this field, it would have your latitude, comma, longitude, or in this case, longitude, comma, latitude in one field. And then the rest we could leave alone. Click Next. Now we return a couple different tables. We return some of the information that you've defined. We don't need this because it's already in our other table structure. All we want is closest associations. It's going to link to the other table information on the ID field. There's our distance, and there's our route. Insert script, and then load data. One other thing just to point out, as I mentioned, make sure your insert cursor is where you want the script to be inserted. Many people would have it like here, and if they click insert script, it actually inserts it here and you get errors and you might not know why. So always make sure you insert the cursor right before where you want to insert the script in a clean area. So load the data. Okay, now our data has been loaded. Let's go back to the app. Okay, so let's show you what's been loaded. If I go to our fields and I get my home to store distance and I drop it on my table. Okay, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stores within 30 miles that are the closest. So we do a little sort and then I select them. There are my 5 stores. Okay, and you can see the mileage there. So that's what the operator closest does using Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector. We can now use a line layer and we can visually see the distance. So what I'm going to do is grab a custom object, in this case go to my GeoAnalytics line layer, and now we can define our layer. So for ID, that's basically just going to be the ID field. That's the store ID. Now you'll notice where it says add measure, you have from, to, and with. So basically each consecutive measure you add is going to fall with respect to from, to, and with. So add measure, in this case here, this is going to be our from location. So I'm just going to plot the home coordinate. And then the next one is the to location. And for that one, we're basically going to use our address geometry. And that's going to be our address lookup geometry. And we have to put that within a only function because we have it here as a measure. So we could basically just choose max for now and then just change that to only. Okay, now by doing so, you have the direct lines from the starting point that show you the distance. So let's go into analysis mode. And now you can have a visual reference from those points. Now there are different appearance parameters that you could set within the line layer. So if I go to appearance, I can select shape and size, min width, max width. In the line, I could put an arrow style on, for example, forward and backwards. And you could adjust the arrow position, curviness, etc. Okay, so if we go back into the table and I choose my closest stores, there you have it. Now, if I wanted to see a simple route of this, we can add another line layer. So in other words, like a driving route. Let's add a line layer. And this is really simple to do. Just for the dimension here, you're just going to select your home address route. And you're going to see that as a measure. And there's your home store route. Okay, now I haven't changed the colors of anything yet. So here, if we go to colors, turn off auto colors and make that red. Okay, so hopefully this gave you a little bit more understanding of how to work with the line layer as well as another operator within the Qlik GeoAnalytics connector. I think in the next video, I'm going to show you how to style some of the info bubbles. So for example, when you hover over something, you can get a little bit more meaningful information. And I even have a technique that I learned from our products team, for example, where we could embed a report or additional information that is called out when you hover over it, passing that parameter to that report. Okay, if you have any comments or suggestions, leave them where this video is posted. And check out these other great resources to learn more about Qlik GeoAnalytics and Qlik. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.